Welcome to the Strength and Courage podcast, a podcast focused on helping you lead with strength and courage in every situation you face. The Strength and Courage podcast is hosted by Ben Thomas and Hassan Kibirango. The Strength and Courage podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Be to the World. Be to the World focuses on bringing fullness of life to the future of every child impacted by war. Stand with the millions of children in countries recovering from war so they can receive a transformative education. Start your journey as a Be to the World ambassador by making a monthly donation at www.betotheworld.org/donate. And now to Ben and Hassan for today's episode.
Yeah, Ben Thomas, I'm excited to have this conversation with you, but also to walk this journey of adding value to leaders together with you. I know that we conceived this idea of a podcast because both of us find ourselves in a context where we're leading, and we're passionate about leaders and adding value to leaders, and would like the leaders out there to get to know you a little bit more. I got to know you a couple of years ago when you moved to Rwanda and moved to our church, and I got interested when the first time you stood up to preach in our church, and I was like, he is really eloquent, really knowledgeable. Yeah, but for the leaders out there, please just give us a bit more of who is Ben Thomas?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Thanks, Hassan. Well, first and foremost, I am loved by God. I'm a son of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I'm a brother to Jesus Christ, and I'm empowered with God's Spirit. So that really is the absolute core of who I am. And that's everything else flows out of that. So then from there, I'm son of P.T. and Anuma Thomas, two lovely people immigrated from India to the U.S. in the early 70s, and I've learned so much from them. Husband to Susie for the last 20 years. Wow. We praise God for that, and she's been an absolute rock and joy, and I've learned, I've grown so much because I get to be her husband. And then I'm father to Simon, who's 16, and Talia, who's 13, and Charlie, who's 12, and Annie, who is 9. And for me, there's that verse in Matthew that says, what good does it do if you gain the whole world and yet you lose your own soul? One of my prayers is that regardless of where God takes me, who he allows me to influence, what he allows me to lead, I pray that those people that are closest to me know me best, and that they get to experience the fullness of what God is doing in my life, first and foremost, before it goes anywhere else. So that's really who I am, and I'm really thankful. And then out of that, in terms of what I do, I'm the co-founder, along with my wife Susie, and CEO of Be to the World, which is a for-impact educational organization that seeks to bring freedom and fullness of life to the future of every child impacted by war.
Wow. And
so we serve here in Rwanda through the Kigali International Community School. We have a partnership with an organization where we help 3 schools in Pakistan, and we're in process with a few other partnerships, coming close to a partnership in Sudan, hopefully Cameroon, Iraq, and some other places that most people probably don't want to travel to. But for us, that's the heartbeat, is when we see countries that have been impacted by war and the generational impacts of war, how we bring education to those places. And so through that, for the last 7 years, I've just started my 8th year of being the director of the Kigali International Community School here in Rwanda, and most known as KICS here, and it's become a household name, I think, in the community here, and we're really thankful to be able to lead that community, and learned so much through that incredible community over these last 7 years, and excited for our 8th as we launch here as well. So that's what I do, and part of this podcast is we've come to a place where really since July 2011 through today, where we've walked through several pretty incredible experiences. Experiencing the brain cancer of my wife and that journey while she was 14 weeks pregnant, experiencing moving to Rwanda, and stepping into Kicks at a tenuous time for Kicks, and to see what's happened after 8 years is pretty remarkable, especially as Kicks gets ready to celebrate our 15th anniversary, finishing a doctoral program in global Christianity and development, and then launching Beat of the World and being able to engage with
it's been a
partners.
Full 8 to 10 years.
Full 8 to 10 years, where we've been able to learn so much and see so much through various leaders around the world. So when I think of this podcast, I'd really love to bring who I am into it, as well as what I do, and be able to share just the leadership journey that I've been on through this experience, and be able to learn from you, and hopefully learn from some of our guests when we have guests and things like that as well. I'd love to be able to share voices of leaders that are leading specifically outside of the global north. The global south, the global east, the Middle East, all those places. Would love to bring their voices to be able to share with leaders around the world.
Wow, that's exciting. And talking about the things you're learning as a leader, just take us back to where did the leadership journey start in terms of your passion for leadership, but then also your own journey of leadership. Where was this love? How did you fall in love with leadership?
Yeah. So there's probably a proper answer.
Okay.
I told you and Fabrice, who's recording, I love to laugh. So let me tell you my first leadership moment.
Okay.
And so kids, if you're listening, don't do this at home. So I must have been 3. We lived in Brooklyn in apartments, and my mom was at work. And so my cousin, my brother, and I were home, which is a natural recipe for disaster.
Yes, unattended.
Yes. And so then my brother and my older cousin take my 3-wheel bicycle.
Oh, boy.
And they don't give it back.
Okay.
And so I use my voice, hey, give it back. They're bigger, they're stronger, they won't give it back. So I knew I had a decision to make. And so I went to the kitchen and I grabbed a knife.
Oh, boy.
And not just a knife, an Indian knife.
Oh, okay.
A sweet Malayali cooking knife. And there was a hallway on one end and the kitchen was on the other end. And I said to my brother and my cousin, give it back. And I knew my voice wasn't enough, but I had the knife in my hand. I gave them 3 times to give it back and they didn't. And then I threw the knife.
Oh, boy.
Which they did not think I would. Thankfully, it didn't hit them, but I got my 3-wheeler back. And so when I trace back my leadership journey, that might be unlike any other, that was the first moment I remember standing up for myself, figuring out what tool did I need,
so that
what was it,
would be practical.
That's right. What wasn't working, and how would I come up with a solution? For me, leadership is about helping people understand what's the problem, make sure you identify it really well, and then what are the tools that you have to be able to come up with a solution. So I knew at that moment,
the knife would be a good
tool. The knife was better than my muscles, which weren't very big at the time.
True.
My mom wasn't home. And so, that was my first leadership moment. And then from there, into high school, began serving in a leadership role on my sports teams, where I played American football, basketball, and a sport called lacrosse, and was captain of all 3, which was really incredible because I wasn't the most gifted at any of those things. Learned a lot from my high school coach. Then launching into playing college football and different opportunities. And then I worked at this camp called Mont Lawn Camp. Mont Lawn campers, if you're listening, you're the best. So this was a camp for children from the inner city of New York to be able to go out into the Pennsylvania countryside. And so I remember being hired by a guy named Mike O'Neill, who's one of my first ever mentors.
Wow.
And I would say, Hassan, he was the first guy that ever saw this sense of like Christian organizational leadership in me. And to this day, he's one of my closest friends and good mentors. And through that interview process, I was just applying to be a counselor. And, you know, this is before the days of cell phones and email. Yeah, like email was still a new thing.
Sure.
So he calls me and he says, Ben, I want to hire you to be the head male counselor. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, I just see something and hear something in you. I believe God has leadership in you.
Wow.
And so, Hassan, I wouldn't be lying if I said the leadership lessons I learned during 3 years at Mont Lawn Camp when I was 19, 20, 21 have stood with me to today. And so, yeah, stepping in and, you know, at the time, I think we had 20 male counselors that I was responsible for, 3 unit leaders, served on the leadership team. And so I just got to experience what leadership looked like. And so from there, you know, I mean, I could walk through some other instances as well, but those would probably be the 2 real ones that stood out from like a really young boy as 3-year-old to kind of those formative stages as you're growing into manhood and you're given responsibility and you don't have a clue what you're doing, but somebody believes in you,
and calling out leadership.
Leadership in me. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And I mean, your journey has been quite a thrill. You grew up in the States. Your parents are originally from India. That means you have quite a bit of the Indian culture in you. How did you end up in Rwanda? Was that the leadership drive calling you out here? How did that journey happen? I mean, the reason I'm asking that is, you know, growing up on this side of the world, our ideal destination was always the US.
Yeah.
You know, for me, the US was a little lower than heaven.
Yeah.
Because we grew up and the US was sold to us through movies and stuff. So it's not until I traveled there I realized it wasn't as the glamorous place.
Right.
People had problems and issues but you moved from the West to Africa. What drove you to that?
Yeah, I would say there's a few things. Our first introduction to Rwanda was through our son, Charlie. We were fortunate to adopt him in 2010. And through that process, we were able to come here and visit Rwanda and receive him and then take him back home with us to the U.S. So that was our first introduction, but we never had in mind that we would come back and live here.
Sure.
I never, ever thought we would end up in Africa. I thought if God called us into ministry, it would be in India, which is where I'm from, and all of those things, or in the Middle East. So really what drew us here were a few things happening at the same time. So first was we were in this place of surrender, meaning my wife was going through a malignant brain tumor and she was given 3 years to live. And so that really humbles you. But 6 months before that, I had an experience with God where God was saying, Ben, you never really knew how much I loved you. You always thought you had to earn my love. And so that really didn't wreck me, but it really caused me to say, oh my gosh, that's true.
Yeah.
So I really was in a place even before Susie's illness where I was saying, God, I surrender my ambition, my drive, all of those things. And then Susie gets sick and our life turns upside down. I resigned from my previous role and focused on taking care of Susie and the kids. And in that, Susie was mad at me for resigning and made me start a doctoral program in global Christianity and development. She knew I wanted to do a doctorate, and she led me to study there. And so while we're in that program, I learn about how Christianity, the center of Christianity, is not in the U.S.
Oh, boy.
It's not in Europe, but it's here in Africa.
True.
Right? And the vast majority of Christians are in the global south. So not Europe, not North America. And so there was a part of me that said, I want to be where the center of global Christianity is. I want to learn. I love learning. And for me, I learn so much better by experience than by books. And so I wanted to be able to learn from brothers and sisters in the global south. And so that was a huge part of it. And then we were in a place where Susie was done with treatment, and she said to me, Ben, when we're done with treatment, I'm going to be healthy for some time. I want to move back overseas. We had lived a year in India. I thought she was crazy, right? I thought she was in denial.
True.
And so we were really praying, where could we be where I could serve as a global leader but not have to travel? And my background was in education and Christian education. And then this opportunity came to us through my father-in-law to lead the Kigali International Community School. And I remember writing him saying, Dad, do you think I can do this? I'd never led a school before. He's recently retired after 42 years of leading Christian schools. And he wrote back very graciously. I call him Jethro. He said, Ben, here's all the reasons why I think you would be great. He said, very few Christian school leaders that I know have come up through the system. They've gotten most of their leadership training somewhere else. He said, when I look at all the leadership you have in you, I totally think you could do this, and your background in education. So Rwanda was an answer to prayer, and it really has turned out to be a place where we're learning a ton. I did my dissertation work here, learning from different leaders that are leading in Rwanda. It's been a place our family has grown. Our youngest started as a 1-year-old, and now she's 9. And so it's really, I realized after our 20th that more than a third of our marriage has been living in Rwanda. So that's how we ended up here. But we honestly, and this can be a story for another time, but we thought we would be here maybe for a year or two until Susie's tumor came back. And just a quick, short version of that is within 6 months, we sensed God say, I want you to now trust me that I've healed her. And so friends, those of you that have friends with brain tumors, families with malignant brain tumors, getting to 9 years post-tumor is highly unlikely. This January we'll celebrate 10 years post-tumor. So this has just been an incredible place for us, and we've been able to learn, we've been able to grow. We've launched Beat of the World from here. We've built our family home here. All of those things. And so, it's been great.
So through your lenses as a leader, you're serving at an organization, a school, but then you started this other organization that is your heartbeat, you and Susie, your wife. When you put on your lenses for leadership, what do you want to see? What do you see as what leadership could be on the continent of Africa and also in the developing world?
Here's what I would say. At its very core, leadership ensures a better future for children.
Wow.
And so regardless of what sector you're in, right? If you're in the for-profit sector, how do you produce products, services to ensure a better future for the next generation? If you're in the for-impact sector, and how do you ensure a brighter future for the children in the next generation? So I don't think about, and not just the next generation, I think about generations to come, right? Like when I think about what am I doing now, certainly I think about my kids, but I pray and I think about my grandkids and my great-grandkids and their kids that come after them. So right now there's 128 million primary and secondary age children who are out of school.
Wow.
In crisis affected areas. And that includes 67 million girls, according to Plan International.
Wow.
That's too many.
That's one too many.
Right?
True.
Like that's more than the population of mostly every country outside of China, India, US, Indonesia, and maybe there's a fifth, right? 128 million. We've got to do better. We have to do better. And so when I envision leadership, I envision leadership that leads to a brighter, better future for children in every generation. And so when I wake up in the morning, that's what I think about.
Wow.
And so, I think if we can do that, if every leader can do that and still make money, still have their thing, not everybody has to be a teacher or an educator, but really think about what is it that would help the next generations of children. Well, then I think our climate would be better.
Wow.
I think poverty would be reduced, eliminated almost. I think we'd come up with ensuring that children are fed and given all the right medicine. To me, if we have that lens versus a me lens or my organization lens, but to say, hey, this is what we all contribute to.
Wow.
That's the future that I see when I think about leadership.
Wow. And that's very noble right there. You know, it's quite noble. You've talked about learning as one of your pursuits you always like to learn. I want to find out the books you read and what inspires you in that area around leadership. So what would your top 3 leadership books be? And I know this is a difficult one. Because you have many. But if you were to scour through the books, which would you say these come to mind as one of the great books that I've read on leadership, and why?
Well, there's many books that I read. There's very few books that I reread. So let me share with you the 3 books or so that I reread on almost an annual basis.
Wow.
So the first is a book called Delighted in God by Roger Steer. And it's the story of George Mueller.
Yes. George Mueller.
George Mueller is the Prussian that started an orphanage in England. And for me, that helps ground me annually in the who I am. That I'm loved, that I'm cared for, and that God's given me a call. That is really important. So that's one. The second book that I often reread, and it could be he writes some similar books, but Mark Batterson, Draw the Circle, Praying 40 Days, whichever one of those two. But I'll often reread that come November. And
is that the Circle Maker?
Another one's the Circle Maker. Praying the Circle and Circle Maker. So either one of those two. And I read that to really help me. I plan my goals typically between November and December for the coming year. And that helps me pray through where do I think God is calling me to focus my time and energy.
Wow. And
so for those of you that can't see us, I've got my 2 journals in front of me. But this is the prayer section of my journal.
Wow.
But those are my goals for 2021. These are the things that God has entrusted only to me.
Wow.
And so I take that time to reread and just draw the circle maker, and then that impacts
the rest of your year.
Yeah, the rest of my year. And then the third book is Essentialism by Greg McKeown.
Essentialism.
Yeah, where you really focus. He does such a great job on focusing on, we all have many things that we could be doing, but what are the one thing, two things that are essential?
Wow.
And so that gives me a frame to eliminate everything else. That gives me a frame where I'm able to say to those that support me at work in various roles, but especially to those, my executive coordinator, my executive assistant, here's what you can say yes to.
Yeah.
Any request outside of these yeses need my permission.
Yeah.
Right? And so that lands my calendar, that lands where I spend my time and my energy, that lands where I travel or where I don't travel. So yeah, those would be the three books that I reread on an annual basis, sometime between November and December. And then by that time, I'm soaking things in prayer, and I'm able to say, okay, here's what God is calling me to trust him for in 2021.
Wow. That's amazing. Amazing. A few value points that we'll probably explore the next time we meet, or the preceding conversations, is for us to unpack the idea of essentialism. I love it. But then also planning. You're an avid planner, and I find that is a challenge for many leaders.
Sure.
So I'm looking forward to just picking your mind and your experience around effective planning and the people you've drawn these habits from, because as leaders, we need to get to a place where planning is second nature to us. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Well, Ben Thomas, I'm extremely delighted to walk this journey with you. I am so humbled to learn from you, and I know that our leaders are going to learn a thing or two as we journey moving forward. I don't know if you have any parting shots as we finish this opening talk.
Thanks.
Please feel free to share.
Yeah, thanks, Hassan. The feeling's mutual. I'm so excited, and I can't wait to get to meet people that are able to listen and hear and contribute to this process. You know, going back to your question about leadership, the great Nelson Mandela is famous for saying, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I'm a firm believer in that.
Couldn't agree more, yeah.
And so for us as leaders, how do we ensure an education for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren? And, you know, one of the phrases at Beat of the World, when people say, hey, Ben, why did you start Beat of the World? And I tell them, it's because I believe that every child deserves a world-class education, not just mine.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right? Mine are getting a world-class education, but I believe every child deserves a world-class education, not just mine. And so for me, you know, leaders that are listening, that's my passion. That's where God's placed me. And for some reason, he's given us success in that field. And so it's an honor to be able to serve in that way. If you want to follow us, I try to stay fairly active on Twitter at Dr. Ben P. Thomas is my Twitter handle. And we're getting ready to launch. We've got benjaminpthomas.com, but that's going to go through a little bit of a relaunch here over the next few months. So you could certainly visit that now, but come back in a little bit as well. But that's where you could find me, is at Dr. Ben P. Thomas.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Hassan.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for joining us today on the Strength and Courage podcast. Please share this episode with your friends and tag us on social media. Ben and Hassan are active across Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You could follow Ben on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Ben P. Thomas. You could follow Hassan on Twitter at Kibirango. Send us your questions via Twitter and we'll get back to you. Thanks to our sponsors at Be to the World. Visit www.betotheworld.org/donate to become a Be to the World ambassador today. Until next time, lead with strength and courage, because at least one person in this world needs you too.